We're talking about what has changed in Iran. Pinak, you had gone to Tehran when our Vice President, Mr. Hamid Ansari, was there for the swearing-in of President Rouhani. So how would you characterize what has changed in Iran, particularly from the Inejad period to where we are now?
What struck me was President Rouhani's acceptance speech, if I may call it so. There was a very, very crucial line that struck me at that time, was that we are not in the business of changing borders, which I thought was very crucial, crucial comment, because we heard the rhetoric of the previous president Ahmadinejad about driving Israel into the sea. Israel is a cancer, and all kinds of rhetoric and pretty bad rhetoric at that. So that was a huge change that one could notice, that Israel was not even mentioned once in the speech. So I thought that was very significant, and it was clear, I think, to many of us at that time, that President Rouhani is going to chart an independent course and a different course than the previous regime. And clearly there was consensus, and the fact that he had won on the plank of bringing succor and relief to the Iranian people who were actually suffering from the sanctions and the condition of the Iranian currency and the rapid slowdown in their oil and gas and infrastructure. Well, I mean, there was an economic slowdown. It was affecting the people. So I think Rouhani, and I think rightly so, any elected leader with a popular mandate will have to take care of the requirement of the people, of the mood and sentiment of the people. And whatever you may say, but Iran is a democracy in the sense that people have voted a president into power. And so he has the people's mandate, and fortunately he also has the backing of the supreme leader, Khamenei. So that way, I think that is a huge change, and I think that it is a result of a very strategic, calculation and policy change, or that they have gone into this nuclear deal, which essentially rolls back, as we can all see, the Iranian nuclear program. And but how far it will be rolled back, obviously there will be differences. But I think there is an opportunity after July, when the agreement runs out, for the future agreement.
Exactly, the next.
Absolutely. So there is a change in Iran, and this change is, I think, good for India and the region, and perhaps the world as well.
Pramit, if you could pick up the region part, because in addition to the changes that have taken place in Iran, there are changes that have taken place around Iran. And in the regional context, I mean, if you look at Iran to Syria, how events have changed, and on this side, Iran, Afghanistan. Again, how would you characterize this?
Well, I think that's one of the crucial reasons why Iran is now prepared to look upon getting a nuclear deal in the first place, one that effectively caps its ability to weaponize or immediately weaponize its nuclear program, while what Iran wants to do at least is retain that potential to do so later on. But why is it prepared to even consider this? Because it's now looking at a regional environment where it sees itself actually in a much better position than it was, let's say, 10 or 15 years ago. The American troops are withdrawing from Afghanistan. They have already withdrawn from Iraq. Saddam Hussein, their great enemy and rival, is gone, and Iraq is now in a not particularly stable government, but it's a Shia government, and therefore friendly, largely friendly to Iraq. It has been able to stave off the collapse of its major Arab ally, which is in Syria, of the Assad government. But if it looks at its region, what's even nicer is that the Saudi Arabia, its other great rivals, which are the Arab Sunnis, Emirates down in the south, the monarchies, they're in relatively bad shape. The Saudi royal family is ailing and ill. It faces the fact that America, its great supporter, is now looking upon the Persian Gulf and saying, well, America is now becoming is already an exporter of gas and now almost self-reliant in oil. Why are we even here defending you? We don't need to defend you anymore. Whereupon it gives Iran the position to be what Iran feels it should be, and if you look at it, on the map, you can see why, that they are the dominant primary power.
The regional power.
Power in the Gulf, rather than the Saudis, who they see as somewhat artificial and upstarts of the past. And the GCC, the Gulf Cooperation Council, which is built around Saudi Arabia, has started to fall apart. Qatar, Oman, among others, are saying that basically we don't really want to have to choose between Saudi Arabia and Iran, and we don't want to be part of this battle.
Let me press you a little on this and say that if you were to summarize and say, what does Iran want? What is Iran seeking? As Pinak said, Mr. Rouhani represents a certain aspiration, both political and societal. But how would you, given your perch as foreign editor, characterize what is Iran seeking? Recognition, prestige?
I think Iran is seeking what it perceives to be a natural position in the Persian Gulf, which it's the first among equals. It is the primus inter pares in the Gulf. That none of the other countries in that region will look upon Iran as a threat, and in particularly the one superpower that has any ability to change this, the Americans, accept Iran into that position. And that's why if you look at this article that their foreign minister recently, Javad Zarif, has written, he basically says the new role, America is now pulling out, the new regional powers, and he cites India, China, Russia are now coming forth. We, Iran, are one of these regional powers, he basically says. And when new multilateralism is required, which obviously means that Iran should be accepted
for what it is,
as a part of as the dominant power in a new regional framework in the Middle East.
Iran and India have actually had what I would describe as a fairly checkered relationship, in the sense that if you go back to the time when the Shah was in power, the Pahlavi dynasty, at that time clearly we were on opposite sides, because Iran was part of the American alliance structure, the old RGC, which had Pakistan, Turkey and Iran. Post-revolution, 1979 onwards, for 35 years now, Iran has been under severe sanctions. Yet, if you look at the characteristics of Iran, its demography, its GDP, its hydrocarbon, and the way in which there is a certain pedigree about the inheritance that Iran has had going back to Persia. So clearly the current developments, whether nuclear or in relation to the Iran, Afghanistan, India road links, they open up many possibilities for India. Pinak, with your, again, wide experience both of the region and having dealt with Iran, how would you look at the future? We have a new government that will take over in India towards the end of May. So if one had to prioritize issues and what should be done with this bilateral, you have, shall we say, a blank check. You can give your own advice now.
Well, I certainly should be not presumptuous enough to do that.
More seriously.
But basically what all this, whatever we have discussed now, opens up what I would say a new vista in our relationship. So one of it is the old one, which is our gas and energy relationship, which will definitely prosper once these sanctions are lifted. And Iran is one of our near neighbors, and it is easy to get gas and oil from them. Particularly oil. Gas, of course, is a different kettle of fish in terms of shipping it. And as you know, India is going in for LNG terminals, and so that kind of gas can come in. But pipeline, as you know, the IPI pipeline, we dropped out of it, but we are still within TAPI. So I think the energy situation will improve, and that is certainly something is good for us in the sense that India needs energy if we are aspiring to grow at 8-9%.
Good for the economy.
Good for the economy. India will be energy dependent for years to come, and I think for foreseeable future we will be energy dependent and will be importing 80% of our energy. So that is a good sign, and I think we should build on it. The other, of course, is our traditional relationships that we have had. And the second major issue for us would be Afghanistan, which is where Iran and India can have some convergence. And I believe as the whole issue in the Middle East or West Asia has become sectarian, a Shia Sunni. Now Taliban is, of course, virulently Sunni, and there is a Shia Iran, and in fact Al Qaeda elements in the fight in the civil war, virtual civil war in Syria, are actually killing the killing the Shias and Alawites and others indiscriminately. I mean, this has become a sectarian war. Now that is something that, of course, worries Iran a lot, and they certainly will not like the Taliban to take over in Kabul, and to that extent the interests of many countries will converge, and that will help us in actually give option. And if the Chabahar route is opened up, Afghanistan can be provided all kinds of help and facilities, which Pakistan, of course, uses its transit agreement with Afghanistan as a kind of a tap to turn it on and off to so that will finesse that route, and I think that would be of great help to Afghanistan. So these two major things for us, I think, are important.
Pramit, you recall we had the Iranian Foreign Minister,
That's
Mr.
right.
Zaraf, here a few weeks ago, and in relation to Afghanistan, as Pinak says, they are also concerned.
Yes.
Now we have the experience of India, Iran and Russia having cooperated to a certain extent when Afghanistan was going through a similar convulsion post the 2001 attacks. So what do you mean? Did you get a sense when Mr. Zaraf was here about how Iran looks at the Afghan situation, and what are the politico-diplomatic possibilities for reviving some kind of a consultation or a discussion on Afghanistan?
Well, I think what we're seeing slowly, and this is a primary driver now of Indian diplomacy, is to rebuild a coalition to support an independent Kabul government. As the Americans pull out, and Karzai has told us that give me somewhere between $3 to $4 billion in a supply of arms, and I can be Najibullah. As you may remember, Najibullah was the last Soviet-backed president, and despite the Soviet withdrawal from Afghanistan, he survived for 3 years. In fact, he survived longer than the Soviet Union did, and the only reason he fell was because the Soviet Union was unable to provide him the money to hold on. But he did a very good job of holding back the Mujahideen.
That's a great tragedy what the Taliban did to him.
Yes, and of course now we have another, essentially the same situation arising, where we are determined to try to keep a Pakistani-backed regime coming to power in Kabul. So we can do the same thing, and Karzai and I suspect Abdullah, maybe Ghani, if they come in as successors, will say the same thing. Give us the money, give us the arms, and we can do this. So Russia, which was initially reluctant and then played footsie with Pakistan for a while in an attempt, has now come in after the recent militant attacks in the Caucasus. They've concluded they have to do the same thing. Iran is also on the same go. I think the problem right now for Iran is twofold. One, the sanctions have crippled them. They don't have that much money on their head. So they don't have, and they have an incredible volatile economy. If you see the currency, the exchange rate of their currency, it's been going up and down like a yo-yo, and they've struggled with this. They don't even have medicine. I mean, the first request they make to India now is give us pharmaceutical products. And even there we can't provide because sanctions are so powerful that it's very difficult for us to even give that in. So they recognize to accomplish everything, first we have to get these sanctions at least partially removed, and some sort of a modus operandi worked out with the Americans. At this point, Iran then can become a major player in supporting us in Afghanistan, along with probably Central Asia, and to some degree a residual U.S. support
presence
as well.
over there.
But the game will there be to support this Afghan government. So there, the convergence of interests now, I think, is relatively clear. The game is therefore to put all the chess pieces together, because Iran is simultaneously playing an even larger chess game in the Persian Gulf and on its nuclear issue. And as Pinak has mentioned, trying to roll back a lot of the damage Ahmadinejad had done. I mean, for example, the battle with Israel was a completely pointless battle because Israelis told us, and I remember they asked India to send a message to Iran, we've never had a problem with the Persians. We were allies of the Shah, we were allies even of previous regimes, and we're so far away. What's the problem here? But you've picked a fight with us, and you've picked a dangerous enemy because Israel has the capacity to attack Israel and has a huge presence in the U.S. Congress.
Which is what I think plays out.
Yeah.
But clearly, there are many developments apropos Iran which have the potential to significantly impact both the nature of the strategic orientation, both within the region and at a global level, if the current nuclear rapprochement between the United States, P5+1 and Iran is taken to its logical conclusion. And for India, whether it's Afghanistan or the nuclear issue, both are critical as far as India's overall security concerns are impacted. And we hope that the current opening, as we said earlier, does represent light at the end of a rather bleak and dark tunnel, both in relation to the nuclear and the Afghanistan. Pramit, many thanks for coming here. Pinak, for sharing your thoughts. Thank you for watching Wide Angle.